Hey, I'm Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co., and this is games leaving the collection for December, and it is it is my biggest month in quite some time. I have something like 20 different games leaving. 3 of them are definitely my usual cheating, where I find some sort of technically leaving, but not really. I don't know the exact count. We'll figure it out by the end of this video, but there are a lot of games leaving, and it's only just the beginning. I have been going through my collection and really starting to purge a lot of things. There's going to be another video, I don't know exactly when, I don't know if it'll be part of my regular games leaving the collection, but like right now on the floor behind the camera, there's a giant stack of a lot of things that I did not think were going, but I'm starting to make some really hard choices and really thinking through what gets played in my collection versus what I really like and think is an awesome game, but doesn't get played. But that's not this video. This video is the usual stuff leaving, although there just happens to be a lot of it. Definitely a little bit more precise as far as me choosing what to go away and a little more harsh, but whatever. Different videos, different conversations. Let's go ahead and get into this. Usual disclaimer that I play a lot of games. I have a lot of games coming in. I will talk about why games are leaving as I go through things, but as usual, many of these games are great games. I am limited on time and space, and I'm always getting new things in, so I do have my favorites that stay year after year after year. I'm in the middle of going, I just finished going through my top 100. If you want to check that out, that'll give you a good indication of the kinds of things that typically stick around, although 1 or 2 of those might be leaving, but that's a longer conversation. Not in this video. Let's go ahead and jump into it. The point is, lots of great games. If I'm getting rid of something, it doesn't mean that it's a bad game by a long shot. Although sometimes they're just not good enough necessarily, at least not for me, based on my own personal opinion. Starting off with the 3 cheating ones, and I probably won't even include these in timestamps. I'll take them out of the thumbnail and everything, but I'll talk about them here. The games that are being upgraded and replaced, so they're technically leaving. We have Air, Land, and Sea. I also have Air, Land, and Sea Critters at War. I thought I'd keep both because I believe they're coming out with an expansion to Air, Land, and Sea. I think they're taking the Century, Spice Road, and Golem Edition approach where they're doing 2 artwork versions of the same game, but they're upgrading and expanding the one I don't like first. So they're going to have an expansion for Air, Land, and Sea before they have an expansion for Critters at War. So I thought I would keep this, but I don't know. I mean, ultimately I'm going to get rid of both. So if I'm not, that's not true. It's a lie. Ultimately I'm getting rid of this one and I'm keeping Critters at War. So I figured I'll just go ahead and do that now. Instead of slowly expanding a game line, I'll get rid of this now. I will hold on to Critters at War. I will definitely acquire all the expansions for that one. It's the same game, it's just cuter artwork, and who can say no to cuter artwork? The next one that's being upgraded, or this one's more of a sideways movement, is Herbaceous is leaving, not because I'm getting rid of Herbaceous, but because I'm getting, or got, Herbaceous Pocket Edition. The Pocket Edition of the game, which is the same game, but even less shelf space. And while that's not always a plus for me, sometimes I like bigger versions of games, but in the case of Herbaceous, this is the kind of game, the style of game it is and the ways I play it, I don't mind having it being a smaller footprint game. I think it works well. It'll stay in my collection a whole lot longer because now it's like itty bitty little size. It's like literally half the size, if not less. So that is Herbaceous, another one that is getting upgraded. And then the big one, literally the big one, is Mind MGMT. And no, there's not a chance on earth that this is leaving my collection, not for quite some time at least. Mind MGMT is delightful to the point that so basically I played Mind MGMT, and then I played Mind MGMT, and then I played Mind MGMT, and then I gave it a 5 out of 5. It's absolutely a 5 out of 5. This game is absolutely amazing for those who like the hidden movement genre. If you don't like the hidden movement genre, this might change your mind, but I don't necessarily think it will. But Mind MGMT is a game that I played this one and immediately upgraded it to the deluxe version of the game. I went out and paid $90 to get one of the few remaining deluxe copies available. They may still have on their page, off the page games, you can go ahead and check them out. They may still have them. For me, this is, when I have a 5 out of 5, I want the best version of that game, because the 5 out of 5s are my favorite games in my collection, the ones I will play most often, hopefully, and even if I don't, I just want them pretty fired up. And so I went out and bought one of these deluxified versions of the game, because while the core gameplay, to be very clear, Mind MGMT, I'm just putting them on the floor, I don't even want them in the thumbnail, because I don't want people to think I'm getting rid of them. I mean, I am, sort of, but Mind MGMT, the core game is more than enough. If you want, I gave this a 5 out of 5 based on the plain retail version of the game. But I want those extra wooden bits and the nice insert and all the pretty shift cases and all that stuff. So yeah, I do want the upgrades. Do you need them? Are they essential? Far from it. But is it nice to have, especially for a game you particularly love? Well, yes. Yes, it is. Moving on from there to games that are actually in my collection, I'll start with, again, 3 semi-cheats, meaning these were supposed to be in last month's video, but I didn't include them. Fortunately, they're still here, so I'm going to get rid of them now. We have K3. K3, I had this in a review roundup. In fact, did I have all 3 of these in a review roundup? I had Food Fighters, K3, and Stay Cool. Okay, so I believe I don't know if they're all in the same video or not, I don't recall. But let's go through them one at a time. K3 is a game that I enjoyed it. This is from Helvetique. I enjoyed this one. I like the core gameplay. It's a little abstract back and forth, but I enjoyed it without feeling that I need to continuously play it again. In terms of the abstracts that will stay in my collection, this is an experience I'm happy I played, but not one that I need to own. It's good. It's not great, at least for me. It's a decent, whatever. You can watch their full review for more information, but it's a little bit mountain climbing game. There's a planning phase to the game. I found that the game can devolve a bit into the choice between perfectly planning things and taking forever, or just playing it going by your gut, so to speak, but then you're not playing it efficiently, which is why it devolves a bit to being a fun, enjoyable experience, but not one that remains as cutthroat as some of the other abstracts in my collection. But from there we have Food Fighters by KTBG. My kids like this one. I've had this in my collection for going on a year now. My kids like it, but they don't ask to play it. So I asked them, and they said I can get rid of it, so Food Fighters is going away. This is my least favorite from the KTBG games. I've played almost all of KTBG games. I don't think I've played the Haunted House one, but I played almost all of them. The rest of them are still in my collection, or I already backed them. I don't know which ones will stay forever. It's the nature of making hard choices, but this one is definitely the easiest one for me to get rid of. I find this to be the least rewarding gameplay, and I don't like how the expansion, in order to utilize expansions, you kind of have to use these stickers that go back and forth. You can reapply them, they go on and off easily, but it just means I'm not going to do it. I'm just less likely to pull out the expansions to play with them. KTBG remains a fun experience, a good gateway game, but I consider this one of the, like, you know, when I think of Haba games who are known for their kids games, their designs, Haba has some fantastic experiences that I recommend to everyone. Haba also has a whole lot of games that are fun, and they're good, and I'll forget about them. And Food Fighters falls into that category. It's fun, it's good, but I'm ready to forget about it. Moving on, we have Stay Cool. Stay Cool from Yellow Games, from, not really Yellow, from Scorpion Mask. I think it was distributed by Yellow, although that might have changed with the new situation they have with Yellow USA, whatever it is. Longer conversation there. But Stay Cool is really, really fun. This is a really good game. The only reason I'm getting rid of this one, this is a party game where you're basically trying to get other players to panic. That's what's happening. You have to stay cool. You have teams who are asking you questions, teammates who are asking you questions. And so you do is they're all asking you questions as you go through, or their opponents. You don't have to be teammates. But you have the other players at the table asking you questions simultaneously while you try to do different things. So you, the player, has to be mindful of the timer, because you have to be switching the timer. If you don't flip the timer, you run out of time. So when it gets close to the end, you need to flip it. But if you don't, you run out of time there. But meanwhile, your other players at the table are asking you questions simultaneously, having you stack dice and answer questions. So you're basically trying to do 3 things at once, and you're trying to stay cool while doing so you can do so most efficiently and gather as many points as possible in the game. It is really solid, it is really fun, it is absolutely hilarious, and my group does not play this kind of game. Very infrequently. This is the kind of game that we dive into here and there, but we don't really pull these out. The kinds of party games we pull out are Dixit, code names, monikers. Monikers is the closest to this kind of hilarity. I think it's a really solid game. It's the kind of game I'm always happy to play, but it's the kind of game my group just doesn't request or ask or play or any of those things. So yeah, it's gonna have to go. By the way, I forgot to say this at the beginning of the video, but there are some doozies leaving, maybe some doozies. There's like one real doozy leaving the collection this month. So if you don't make it to the end of the video, make sure to check with the timestamp so you can check that one out, because there's a game. It was almost in my top 100 this year, but then I played it again, and I was like, you know what? I think the new is gone, so we're not really the new. I'll get to it. We'll talk about it later. Timestamps in case you want to skip. Give me a second to take a sip here. It's morning time. I want my coffee. You see, I don't always film my videos at 11 p.m. at night or 12 p.m. at night. Sometimes I do them in the morning when the kids are gone to school, but right before work. Got a little window there. So, what do we have next? Next up, let's go through a whole bunch. You know what? Let's take a small break with a slightly larger game. Let's go with Cuphead. Cuphead, the fast-rolling dice game. I reviewed this on the channel, so you may have already seen my opinion of it. The short version is this falls into the category of a game. I'm happy I played it. I'm also ready to move on from it. Cuphead is a real-time, fast-moving dice game. The core gameplay is trying to mimic the chaos and the freneticness of actual Cuphead, the video game, but doing so as you try to frantically roll dice in 10, 15, or 20-second windows, depending on the difficulty you're choosing, and then assigning them to the various order of cards in order to, jump and run and shoot and kill the boss, slowly take them out before they take you out. It is a really solid gameplay that actually, the core gameplay kind of feels a little bit like Mega Man Adventures, a new game coming out that I also just reviewed on the channel. But Cuphead is more fast-paced. Cuphead's leaning into the real-time element of it as opposed to the strategic element of it. My biggest problem with Cuphead, and it's a problem I have with all real-time games to an extent, but Cuphead is much worse, is that a lot of the strategy comes down to just trying to manage things within the time frame of the window that you have, the 10-15 seconds or so. I find 20 seconds is a bit too easy. I find 10 seconds is really hard for me personally, but if you got good at the game, I can see it being the right difficulty. For me, 15 seconds was the sweet spot. 15 seconds was the sweet spot of how much time I needed to both be a challenge as far as allocating my dice, while also being doable and not just complete madness. I mean, 10 seconds is so little time. You barely have time to get moving. But within 15 seconds, that meant the core gameplay loop of Cuphead is in a half hour of gameplay, I'd be actually playing the game for around 2.5 to 4 minutes of the game, and the rest of the time was like setting up for the next round or boss or whatever it is, and shuffling cards in between the rounds. It was a lot more maintenance and a lot less dice rolling. I liked the core gameplay of Cuphead. It is enjoyable, it is fun, but it's one that I'm ready to move on from, obviously. From there, we have... Let's go with small ones. From there we have another cheat. This I should have included as my earlier cheats. This is Unlock. Unlock the Adventures of Oz. I played this one. I'm done with it. Whenever I'm done with an Unlock game, it leaves the collection. That's how it works. In particular, I would say Unlock was possibly my least favorite Unlock game that I've played in a while. I haven't played all of the Unlocks. I've probably played around 8 or 9 of them so far. I have a bunch of them. I slowly go through them. Every few months I pull out and play another one. It's actually been a while since my last one. But either way, Unlock is one that, I mean, they go as soon as I leave my collection. I still enjoyed this. I still recommend it. It is my least favorite because I found this to be the least intuitive as far as how things go. Now, Unlocks, they're escape room games. They're not inherently meant to be intuitive. They're meant to be a challenge, a puzzle. But to me, there's a certain line. Like, when I'm doing a puzzle, I kind of want to know that I found the answer. Unlock kind of gives you... this particular version of Unlock, this particular edition of it, it gave you a lot of things that I just found to be... There are some clever tricks that I really enjoyed and really appreciated, but there were also lines in it or parts of it that I just didn't think were intuitive. Like, to the point that we solved certain puzzles and then had to go through, there's like little guides you can go through online, little walkthroughs. So there are certain puzzles we solved and still had to look at the walkthroughs to kind of make sure we were right, because it's just like, well, like, I think that's the right answer, but there was a lack of certainty around it because of the nature of the game. Not overly going to the puzzle, just saying, I still recommend it, I still think it's great. Definitely don't do this as your first Unlock ever. That would be a huge, terrible mistake. Still a good one of my least favorite ones, possibly my least favorite one that I've played from the Unlock series. Next up, we have Mondrian Blocks. These are 2 puzzle games. They're not really board games, they're puzzles, but what's the difference between a solo board game and a puzzle? It's an interesting conversation for another time. Mondrian Blocks is a little solo game where you're basically trying to... Solo puzzle. The truth is you could actually combine with other players. You're trying to fit these patterns. So you have these cards, you have to build these patterns out. You have these blocks, you have to arrange them so they all fit in the grid, and they accomplish certain key things. So it'll say, oh, you have to place this block here and that block here, now fill the rest of the grid. And so you have to make everything fit around that, which is a bit of a logic chain of, well, if this goes here, then I won't get that there, so that can't go there, and you're working your way backwards trying to fill out the grid. I enjoy it. I play with my kids, but I also went through, like, I don't know, 30, 40 of these puzzles, and I'm good to go. It doesn't really iterate. There's no sense of escalation, like as opposed to a game like Relics of Rajavihara, which is a puzzle game that gives you a sense of escalation of things you discover and unlock and make the puzzle more intricate as you go through it. I found that Mondrian Blocks didn't give me that sense of escalation. It just gave me the same puzzle again and again and again, similar to games like Rush Hour. I enjoyed it, but I played it 30, 40 times, and my kids and I do not pull it out anymore, so time to move on. From there we have Biblios 1350, which, Bristol 1350, not Biblios, Bristol 1350, which I'm vaguely wondering whether I put this in last month's video. I don't remember. If I did, I apologize. Bristol 1350. I reviewed this one. I gave it a 2.5 out of 5. I did not, 2.5, I didn't enjoy it. I had a fun time, but I would never choose to play this game compared to other hidden role games. This is a hidden role game as you're trying to wander through the town of Bristol, and you're trying to basically ensure that you escape without the plague, or if you have the plague, that everyone else dies. That's basically the goal of the game. I found that it was a little too random and chaotic for the gameplay. While it still had the fun element that any hidden role game has of, oh, what did I do, what did you do, can I trap you, can I get away from you, it still had tactical planning, it still had the sense of fooling other players and all of that stuff that you get out of a hidden role game, but it came with more chaos and randomness than I particularly enjoy for this type of genre. So, decent game, but one that I didn't particularly love. I can see if somebody did enjoy this, I think it's a fun party-ish style game, but it's less of the strategy aspect that I like in my hidden role games. That's Bristol 1350. Next up, we have the Doom Machine. The Doom Machine. This is one, I almost did a review on this one because I actually dove into this. It's a tiny little box. I love it. A little mint tin, very premium. This thing, it feels premium. But Doom Machine by Nathan Munir is a game that I started playing through this one and I really, really enjoyed it. I was like, you know what, this is a really solid game. And then I got up to like game 4 or 5 and I kind of realized that the gameplay kind of has you slowly dying, first of all, which is not my genre in general, meaning the goal is to survive and kill the Doom Machine, but you're kind of getting weaker most of the time as you play through the game. You don't really get stronger, you just try to survive. That's not entirely true, you could earn more dice, but I find that they get taken away as often as you earn them. I found that Doom Machine gave me a solo puzzle, but one with less choice than I wanted, meaning a lot of the choices you make in Doom Machine, in my opinion, are more obvious choices. It's more the illusion of choice as opposed to practical, actual choices. Like, oh, I can assign my dice here or here in order to win, but there's usually a more obvious choice in the game. Now, to be very fair to Doom Machine, I think I lose this game like 70% of the time, which means my obvious choice might be that I'm playing it horribly. So take my obvious choice criticism with a grain of salt, but I would say that this is an interesting conversation around game design in general. For me, the illusion of having a less obvious choice is more important than having a wrong obvious choice, if that makes sense. Meaning, I'd rather feel like I'm making choices, even if they're bad choices, than feel certain I'm making the right choices if they're bad choices. Hopefully I explained that right. Basically, I want to feel like I have agency, whether or not I do. So the fact that I feel that I'm making the obvious choice, even if I'm wrong, already takes away from the experience, even if I'm wrong. It's an interesting conversation about game design, about the nature of being right, about balance, about unbalance. Like, I remember reading a blog post from Stan Kudensky about, not Stan Kudensky, from Johnny Pack, about the nature of balance in games, that if players feel a game is unbalanced, even if you as the designer can show how it is all balanced, you may already be failing. Not with an individual player, obviously. If an individual player has a complaint as an individual person. But if you have a decent section of your player base that says this game is unbalanced, even if you can mathematically prove it is, you're still designing the game for the players, and the players are the ones whose opinions almost matter in a way. But anyways, that's Doom Machine. I liked it, but for me, I'd rather play a game like Sprawlopolis where I feel I have more agency. Next up, we have a game I've been pushing off getting rid of for a while. These are the Dale of Merchants. I like both these games. I really do. But I find that I don't pull them out. Dale of Merchants is a game that I want to like more than I like. Now, this is an interesting conversation between Dale of Merchants and Dominion here, because I love Dominion, and I don't love Dale of Merchants. Now, my reason for that is Dale of Merchants, I feel that when I play Dale of Merchants, I feel the cards are too easy to acquire, and that means that the abilities to me start to feel less important than they supposedly are. And I love abilities, but I don't like the sense that my abilities don't actually matter. You're trying to basically build out a bunch of stalls, and you're trying to build them out in order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I find it's much better to simply power through to those stalls as opposed to focusing on the abilities. And so the whole game here, I feel like playing it for the fun aspect is not efficient, and playing it efficiently is not fun, which isn't a dynamic I like. I've kept it for so long because of how whimsical and endearing it is. Now, granted, somebody pointed out, and this is where it gets interesting, somebody pointed out that I love Dominion and I'm keeping Dominion, and they pointed out to me that Dominion has theoretically the same problem, where more often than not, the cards you're buying, you should be buying a bigger percentage of gold cards in Dominion as opposed to ability cards. That if the people tend to buy a lot more ability cards as opposed to somebody who would buy a lot more gold cards, the gold card player would win. So it has the same aspect almost of playing for fun versus playing efficiently. The difference to me is that, first of all, the difference to me is, it's a harder conversation. To me, one of the big differences is that mathematically they've also shown that Dominion is more efficient when you combine both. Meaning, while it's true that players tend to lean more heavily into abilities, the abilities actually do matter. And the second thing is that the sense of getting cards in Dominion, it actually is a challenge. So even if I'm playing the game less efficiently, it at least feels like a challenge to get my ability engine running. Dale of Merchants doesn't feel like a challenge to get your ability engine running, and it's not even efficient. So at no point do I get that sense of anything other than I really want to like this game more than I like this game. That's been in my collection for like 2-3 years now, because I keep pushing off getting rid of it, because it is whimsical and it is charming, and every single time I play it, I do have fun. But I'd rather play Dominion. And again, I'm making hard choices here. Lots and lots of hard choices. This is a game I easily recommend. I mean, it's got a Dice Tower Seal of Excellence, and I wouldn't go that high, but I don't disagree or I understand why it's there. I understand why it's there. It's whimsical, it's charming, it's a light, fun deck builder. I want to see Dale of Merchants redesigned to have the cards be harder to get your hands on. If they made that one change, I think I would really appreciate the core game a lot more. As it stands right now, it's time to say bye-bye. Next up, we have an easy one to say goodbye to, Exploding Kittens. We have a bunch of these games, these what's it called? Exploding Kittens lines of games, whatever they are. There's a whole company here, Exploding Kittens games. We have a bunch of these. We have Taco Cat, we have Throw to a Burrito, we have whatever. We have all these games. I just keep asking my daughter when she's ready to get rid of them. She's finally ready to get rid of Exploding Kittens. I actually like Exploding Kittens. It is actually a fun experience. Not one I'm ever going to choose, but one that I'm happy to play when my daughter pulls it out and asks for it, but she has stopped pulling it out and asking for it, which is why I've asked her if we can get rid of it. Now, I've asked her that about a few of the other games, and she still wants to hold on to those, so I let her, because if she wants a game, she can hold on to it. But Exploding Kittens, time for this one to say goodbye. Next up, we have Castle Party by Devere. This is a recent review that I found it charming. Like the Hill of Merchants, the actual art, the world, all that is very charming. But it's a roll and write where you're basically placing polygonal shapes into your castle, and I found the gameplay not as compelling or rewarding as the style of game I like from my flip and writes, from my roll and writes and all of that. I found this charming, I found it enjoyable, I also found it forgettable. That's what I mean, past the art. The art is whimsical, all that's endearing, but it was forgettable to me once you got past the world building. The gameplay was okay in a world of many not okay games, meaning games that are amazing, games that are better. So for me, I thought, like, if this is your first introduction to a roll and write, flip and write game, I think you'll have fun. I think you'll enjoy it. Also, I will give you a laundry list of games that I think are better once you're ready to move on from it. I don't want to push people to move on from games. If you're enjoying yourself, have fun. Once you're ready to move on, once you want a sense of more, then we can have a conversation about the games that are better than Castle Party out there. From there, we have Fairy Season. Fairy Season. This is one I've held on to for a while. This is another one of Ricky's picks, where this is from Good Games Publishing. It's a light little game of playing out your fairies and trying to basically, well, win. But it's got a degree of trick-taking to it, sort of, not really. But it's... the art's compelling, the world's compelling. I didn't particularly enjoy it. My daughter did, and she doesn't ask to play it anymore, so I asked her if we can get rid of it, and she said yes. That's the short version. It's not a game for me. It's a little bit too... I don't know, it feels more like a typical card game. Like a game like a Spit or Go Fish or that kind of genre of game. It doesn't really feel like a classic board game. It feels more like a card game in that general sense of things. From there, we have a harder one. This is a harder one for me. This is Wild Space. Wild Space by Pandasaurus Games. I reviewed this one recently, and I really, really enjoyed it. I really do. I give this one a 3.5 out of 5. I enjoyed the core gameplay loop of playing cards, of comboing abilities, plus the fact that it plays well at a variety of player counts, and it plays consistently in 25-30 minutes. It's a really good game. It is. But there was an element that was lacking for me. Primarily, I felt the planets were just not interesting at all, and I felt the abilities, I wanted a little bit more interestingness from the ability. Meaning, having played this a bunch of times, I kind of feel like I've seen the game. I could keep going through it, but it's not my... I don't know, for some reason I feel this won't be picked up as a filler game quite as much, in contrast with the many, many games I have in my collection that I like more, and I've seen a lot of what this game has to offer. There is an expansion out. I looked into the expansion to see if I thought that would boost it for me, but I think it's really more of the same. I think it's more of a just linear expansion, giving you more stuff, but not necessarily better or changing the core gameplay. Wild Space is a game about basically comboing cards. You play a card to play a card to play a card. You're trying to build combos across 10 turns, and it gives you an interesting puzzle of how to efficiently build your score up around those 10 turns. I think this is a good game here. I do enjoy it. But I have a lot of games, and this one I don't think it will get played, in contrast with other games that I think are both new and shiny and old and better for me. This is one of the harder ones as far as games I'm getting rid of today. Next up, we have a game that I question myself on this one. Like, let's go through it. So, we have Seven Wonders Architects. Seven Wonders Architects, this is one that the camps of people seem to be divided into two on this game. There are people who are like, this is lovely, this is charming, this is so accessible and endearing and wonderful and all that and whatever. And then there's people like me who are like, I mean, it's nice, but like, it just made Seven Wonders simpler, which I didn't think that was a problem we needed to solve. I thought Seven Wonders was already a gateway game. This made Seven Wonders like gateway game, which is not a bad thing. I think that the wide distribution arm of Asmodee, I think this game will hit a lot of stores. I think it will be picked up by a decent amount of people. I think the new wonders, that they give you these giant shapes of wonders instead of just abstracted on a board, I think those will all be compelling to quote-unquote non-gamers. And it's weird because I don't want to gatekeep here. It's not about gatekeeping. Any gamer who enjoys this game, enjoy the game by all means. And I know there are a lot. Tom Vassell loved this game. And I think he's a gamer. So it's not about gatekeeping at all. It's my own personal opinion of the game is that it is on the lighter side. Like light enough that I enjoy myself. I very much enjoy myself. I played this game multiple times. Every single play was fun. But I will never request this over Seven Wonders. They basically took Seven Wonders, they made it lighter, and they removed tableau building and drafting. Two of my favorite things in games. They gave me a game that is charming and enjoyable until I think through the fact that I'm just doing one thing every single turn. I'm just grabbing a card. And then I'm just playing that card to do the obvious, not even the obvious, the forced thing to do. You make a minimal amount of decisions in this game. It is fun to play. Absolutely. I think it's a great gateway game. I just feel like this isn't the game I'll choose to introduce people to gateway games. There are games that are just as accessible, but give you more strategic decisions, that give you that taste of a little more strategy. Games like Baron Park, I'll choose any day over Seven Wonders Architects. I do agree that there are some players for whom even Seven Wonders is a little bit too much of a game. And so this gives you a game that gives you the type of strategy game you're looking for. It gives it to you at a high player count if you want to, meaning Baron Park won't go up to 7 players, whatever this goes up to, 7 players. Neither will Marvel United. Marvel United is another great accessible game with more agency around what you do, and a more compelling theme, at least personally speaking. But Seven Wonders Architects is... I'm happy it exists. I'm very happy it exists. Happy is probably the wrong word. I think it's produced well enough and will get into enough people's hands that I think that it will do well for the hobby. For me personally, I enjoyed it. I gave it a 3. Like, I mean, I liked it. I did like it. I did have fun with it. It's not lower than that. I would absolutely play this. If you're like, hey, I just got Seven Wonders Architects, I want to give it a shot, I'd be like, yeah, sure, I'm down for it. I mean, I'd rather play something else, but I'm totally down for Seven Wonders Architects. It was fun. But yeah, I was very intrigued by the fact that there is a decent split on the people who are, like, again, even within the realm of gamers, not to gatekeep with labels, but labels can be helpful. Even within that realm of gamers, I found there was a split as far as general opinion around the game. For me, though, it is good. I'll happily play it with you. Also, I don't need to own it, so we're gonna move on from that one. Next up, we have Brian Boru. Another game that I debated keeping. I reviewed this one, I gave it a 3.5 out of 5. This is from Osprey Games, and it gives you trick-taking, which is a mechanic I don't love, and it gives you card drafting, which is a mechanic I do love, and area control, which is a mechanic I do love, at least when done the way I like area control. Brian Boru, though, I debated keeping this one. I debated holding on to it because I did enjoy it. But again, some of these games, I always want to like games more than I like games. Games that are 4 almost always stay in my collection. If I rate a game of 4, it's almost always staying in my collection, at least 4 right now. Over time, different conversation, but 4 right now, in my collection. Games that are 3.5s tend to fall more into the category of, I like you and I want to keep you. The question is, who am I playing you with? And that's where it becomes a question of the audience, of the gamers that I'm playing it with, the people I'm playing it with. Lighter games, very often it's a 3.5 for me, but like my daughter likes it, or it's the kind of game I'll pull off with new people, or that kind of realm. So I would say lighter games that are a 3.5, or even a 3 sometimes, those will sometimes stay. Brian Boru is a game that I'm only going to play it with the people in my collection who play some of my favorite, not the people in my collection, I don't have a collection of people, I'm sorry, with the people in my game group that play my favorite games. Meaning, it's not that I don't like Brian Boru. I enjoyed it. I'm happy to dive back into it if you want to. But the people I would play Brian Boru with, they're the ones who I'm going to play my favorite games with. And so I don't think Brian Boru is going to get played despite thinking it is a good game. I'm interested to see, I mean, this is one that I think as well, like Seven Wonders Architects, although very differently in terms of the opinion, style, or whatever it is, Brian Boru is well loved by a lot of people. I think a lot of people really enjoyed this one, a lot of people dove into it and had fun with it. I think it's a good game. It just wasn't compelling enough for me to hold on to it. Next up, we have an easy one for me to get rid of. I don't know why this is still low down the list, just because of box size probably, which is Chai. Chai is a game that I never loved. I never loved Chai. Chai was always an easy game for me to get rid of, because Chai is okay. It's okay. This is a 2.5 for me. Like, I'm okay with the gameplay that's happening. I just am not compelled by it. Now, Chai Tea for 2, I really like that one. That's a 2-player head-to-head. Really enjoyed that one. But basic pure Chai, I mean, like tea, I'd just rather have coffee. So it was okay. It's like set collection and gathering things. The actions in the game are fine. They're just not compelling enough. The theme's not compelling. The artwork and production is amazing, but the theme's not compelling to me at all personally. I'm not a tea person in the slightest. And the gameplay is very much on the lighter side. So from a thematic sense, like if I was going to keep a game like Chai, I'd keep Seven Wonders Architects. I wouldn't keep Chai. I'd keep Seven Wonders Architects is just much more compelling in terms of a lighter game that offers you minimal choice. I just like Seven Wonders Architects more. I actually think Chai offers you a bit more choice, by the way, a little more strategy, but I just wasn't compelled by either of them as far as the strategic choice. Chai is a game I only kept because of my daughter, which means as soon as she was ready to let it go, it's gone. So that's Chai. Next and lastly on this list, which if you skipped here because it was the only interesting thing you saw, I feel for you, we have Chaos in the Old World. Chaos in the Old World is a fantastic game. This is a Eric Lang design that many people love this more than Blood Rage. Now, I do not by a long shot. I like the developed asymmetry, and this is a problem I had with Cthulhu Wars as well. I like to develop asymmetry more than I like asymmetry. You give me a game like Root or Kemet, I prefer Kemet. You give me a game like Blood Rage or Chaos in the Old World, I prefer Blood Rage. I prefer the ability to choose my own path, to forge my own destiny, as opposed to you handing me a set of rules, an assignment that I have to go through. Same thing with Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars is asymmetry, but not developed asymmetry. You basically have a very static asymmetry of what you're going to go through. Expansions can modulate that, but Cthulhu Wars, like Chaos in the Old World, are both games that I easily rate a 4. Chaos in the Old World is easily a 4 for me. Arguably a 4.5, by the way. Cthulhu Wars is just a 4. Chaos in the Old World is likely a 4.5 for me. I really like it. But again, area control is the most contested genre, ironically enough, in my collection as far as games that I love. Between Kemet, between Inish, between Cyclades, between Rurik, between Blood Rage, between... What else do I have? Fall of the Mountain King coming. We have Wonderland's War coming. I mean, coming does not mean that they're going to stay. But yeah, so there's a lot of incredible... I'm missing some by them. I'm definitely missing some. But some of my favorite games in my collection are area control experiences. And so when I have a game like Chaos in the Old World that I feel the choices I'm being given are more of a homework assignment, like I have to play to my faction's strength. So my actions to a degree are scripted. Lots of agency within that scripted, but it doesn't give me the wide open world of I get to do what I want to do. I have to do what the game tells me is the most efficient thing for me to do, which is always just less fun for me. It's one of the problems I had with Scythe as well. The nature of the player boards you got in Scythe gave you that same problem of, it gave you a clearly more efficient way that you play through the game. And I just find that less rewarding, less compelling as a journey, as an adventure in the game. Now again, this is a 4.5 for me. Like, it's a really, really good game. And the Horned Rat expansion, which I have, in case you say, but get the Horned Rat expansion. I think the Horned Rat expansion is excellent. And it gives you more choice, more agency, more cards, another faction. It gives you a lot of fun things to go through. But it's a game that every time I play Chaos in the Old World, I just wish I'd rather have spent that time playing Blood Rage or Kemet or one of my other games. This is a problem I had with Rising Sun as well, by the way. Rising Sun is a game that's probably a 4 for me, not a 4.5. But like every once in a while, I get people who are like, why does Alex hate Rising Sun? I don't hate Rising Sun. I like Rising Sun. I just don't like Rising Sun in comparison with the other area control games that I love. And so that's where Chaos in the Old World is going to go away. I've enjoyed this one. I've probably played this game like, I don't know, 10 plus times over the years. It's not a game we pull out often, but it's a game that always hits the table infrequently. The last few times it hit the table infrequently, I was like, you know what? I think I've played this one out. I think I've enjoyed this one. I've seen what the game has to offer. I like what it has to offer, but I'd rather pull out other experiences and play those instead. So that's it. We have, what do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I think 21, because I think I counted both Mondrian Blocks. 21 games we are getting rid of this week, this month. That's a pretty decent list, and my shelves are really cleaning up. I'm going through a massive purge. Again, I don't know how I'm going to do it in terms of whether I'll do a dedicated video for this massive purge, or whether they'll slowly filter into my games leaving the collections, because some of them I'm not sure about. I'm doing a thing where I take games off the shelf, I put them in a pile, and if I don't have any doubt about that pile, they're going away. That's why they're not in this video. Like, because I'm being cutthroat enough with my decisions right now that I want to give myself time to rethink and pull something back and rescue it. So we'll see what happens. It's a lot of Calyx cubbies are clearing up. In any case, until next time, I am Alex Radcliffe from Board Game Co. I'll throw a link down below as far as people always ask, what do you do with games? How do you sell them? All that. I'll throw a link down below. I usually try to sell or trade them. I usually start with like Facebook groups, and then from there go up to different options, including to Board Game Co., the company that I run. So games eventually do make their way there. But either way, until next time, once again, I said it already, have a good one.